Night Court is a precode drama from 1932. It follows a corrupt judge, played by Walter Huston, who abuses his power for personal gain. While being investigated by the authorities, he hides his mistress, played by Noel, in a flat so that she won't be subpoenaed and forced to testify against him. This flat just so happens to be located next to a happy young married couple, played by Phillips, Holmes, and Anita Page. After a misunderstanding, Huston believes Page and Holmes are informers for the investigators and decides to use his power to stop them. From there, the couple's lives begin to unravel. This film really earns its precode stature. There are some truly shocking moments in this. Visually, there's nothing too risque, but in terms of story, this can be very unnerving. Just to give you a taste of what this film has in store, the first thing Huston does is frame Page on a false prostitution charge. This is to send her to jail so she doesn't speak to the authorities. Then he sets her up with a corrupt attorney during the trial who goes against her wishes and pleads guilty on her behalf. Believe me when I say this film only gets more shocking from there. The script is beautifully written. It does a great job slowly building suspense throughout the entire film. Just when you think the story is gonna zig, it zags. The whole time you're on the edge of your seat wondering what will happen next, and how will our main characters beat this? Or, more precisely, if they'll beat it. It's precode after all, there's no guarantee of a happy ending. Like most precodes, it's filled with great dialogue. It's not as snappy as some of its contemporaries, but it doesn't need to be. The dialogue is more naturalistic and makes the tragedy seem more plausible. With such a great script, I had to look into it and found out it was actually adapted from an unproduced play written by Mark Hellinger, who would go on to become a successful Hollywood producer, making some of the best crime pictures ever made. His best-known works are probably The Roaring Twenties, The Killers, and The Naked City. Hellinger started his career as a crime reporter, so his films always had an extra sense of grit to them, and this is no exception. I think director W.S Van Dyke sensed this in the script and took extra care to make sure this was reflected visually. This film predates the film noir movement by almost 10 years, but some of these shots look like they would fit right alongside stills of the Maltese Falcon and Gilda. I especially love the shots of Anita Page in jail. They just epitomize her hopelessness. She feels more like a rat in a cage rather than a woman in jeopardy. Even the shots that are well lit have this gritty sense to them. It's not like other MGM films at the time that were always lush and chic. This look helps it stand out and makes it a unique specimen of the studio. Walter Huston gives a malevolent performance as the judge. It's both fascinating and frightening to see the depths he'll stoop to in order to keep his power. When he goes through the process of breaking up the family, he does it with speedy efficiency. It feels like Huston has done this before. It begs the question, how many other people's lives has he ruined on purpose? It's not just his actions that make him a dastardly villain, it's also how Huston plays him. Most actors from the time probably would have portrayed the judge as one note and always evil. However, Huston makes this character feel multidimensional by expressing a wide range of emotions. A scene that I think demonstrates his despicableness is one that's often overlooked. It's when an old woman is brought to the court for disturbing the peace and loitering. Huston dismisses the charges because he realizes she's just starving. He then gives her money and offers to help her get food. Huston plays this with sincerity and gravitas, and it doesn't feel like he's playing this up to convince someone he's nice. It feels like he's doing it because he thinks this woman has been wronged. This tells us he has some empathy, but you never see any of it when he deals with Page or Holmes. He's a man who's well aware of the amount of damage he's doing and could care less because it benefits him. That is fucking sinister. For as good as he is, the performance I want to highlight are Phillips, Holmes and Anita Page. Yes, I'm highlighting 2 actors instead of 1. They're delightfully playful when they're doting on each other. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a bit much at times, but it really does help the film when they get separated. The emotional transformations they go through is stellar. Once Anita Page is thrown in prison, she evokes the characterizations of a woman trapped in a nightmare. Yes, like many women from this era, she screams, but you can't blame her. She's shocked by the system being played against her and frustrated that no one is listening to her story. Page was a silent film veteran and knew exactly how to use her body to convey her character's internal struggle. There are times where we never see an expression on her face, and we don't need to. Just the back of her head as she whimpers for help is enough. By not allowing us to see her face, it feels like she's fading away in the prison, becoming just another faceless inmate forgotten by the system. Phillips Holmes' crusade to free his wife brings him through a lot of emotional highs and lows. He's given tons of dialogue to recite and does a good job with it, but where he really stands out is with his expressions. You can see the deterioration of his spirit as the film progresses. He's determined to clear Page's name, but he has no idea how to do it. Every failure weighs on him and makes his morals dissipate. Holmes has very expressive eyes, and it's amazing the range of emotions he communicates with them. Both Page and Holmes were pretty big stars at the time. Page's breakthrough in Hollywood sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. Born August 4th, 1910, in Queens, New York, Page traveled to Hollywood in her mid-20s to pursue an acting career. She was friends with actress Betty Bronson and got her break working in bit parts at Paramount. One day, the man in charge of handling Bronson's fan mail saw a photo of Paige and decided to help her get a screen test. Paige did her screen test and was offered a contract from not only Paramount, but MGM. How that happened is not entirely clear from my research, but what is clear is that Paige accepted the MGM contract, mainly because she felt MGM was better at cultivating female actresses' careers. The decision paid off because she flourished at the studio, so much so that at one time she was one of the top receivers of fan mail. She was only surpassed by Greta Garbo. Paige entered films in the mid-20s and became a silent star right before talkies started. She was never a fan of making talkies and thought silent films were superior artistically. Ironically, the film she's most known for is The Broadway Melody, the first sound movie to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. She would retire from films in 1933. She was 23 years old. She cited many reasons for this, including not getting a pay raise and unwanted advances from Irving Thalberg. In 1937, she married Navy pilot Hersholt House. Their marriage lasted until his death in 1991. Paige was a common resource for film historians. She frequently gave interviews and talked extensively about MGM and its stars. Because of this, she gave herself the nickname the Last of the Silent Stars, which technically isn't true, but hey, it has a nice ring to it. Paige passed away in 2008 of natural causes. She was 98 years old. Holmes has a similar Cinderella story. Born July 22, 1907 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, he was the son of stage actors Edna Phillips and Taylor Holmes. Yeah, it's actually Phillips Holmes, not Philip Holmes, something I didn't realize until I started writing this. Interestingly, his dad's last film was playing King Stefan in Sleeping Beauty, aka Aurora's father. Although it's not detailed in any source, it seems like Holmes tried to start a career in his late teens/early 20s, because he has 2 uncredited roles in silent movies. However, his big break came completely by chance. He was attending college at Princeton University when a movie called Varsity was filming there. The director, Frank Tuttle, saw him in the crowd and offered him a screen test/part in the film. This finally gave him the break he was looking for, and it just so happened that he achieved fame at the same time talkies were catching on. He's most famous for starring in Josef von Sternberg's An American Tragedy, which would later be remade as A Place in the Sun. Some other notable films of his are Broken Lullaby, Dinner at 8, and The Criminal Code. The film Frankenstein director James Whale saw when he discovered Boris Karloff, and funny enough, it also stars Walter Huston. In 1933, the same year Paige would retire, Holmes was involved in a small but troubling scandal. He was driving around Mae Clark, who played Elizabeth in James Whale's Frankenstein, when he crashed into another car. Clark sustained some injuries, including a broken jaw. She sued Holmes, claiming he was drunk, but it was settled out of court. After the incident, there seemed to be a decline in quality of the films he was starring in. By the time World War II started, his career was over, so he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Unfortunately, he died not too long after he completed his training. While traveling to where he was going to be stationed, the plane he was on had a mid-air collision with another plane. He was 35 years old. Well, after that uplifting note, if you'd like to see one of the most shocking precode films of all time, or discover 2 first-rate talents from the early days of sound, then I highly recommend Night Court.